Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the CarsGuide newscast, where we're talking all things EVs. We'll touch on the state of the market and what is to come and try to answer the question that every new car buyer surely has on their mind right now. Is now the time to go electric? I'm CarsGuide news editor Tung Nguyen, and joining me is senior journalist and all-round grouse guy Richard Berry.
G'day.
And also resident tech head and EV guide editor Tom White.
Hello.
So just to set the scene really quickly here, last month, that is June for those of you guys who are listening sometime in the future, nearly 9% of all cars sold in Australia were EVs. And for the first 6 months of 2023, well, EV sales have actually outpaced hybrid and plug-in hybrid vehicle sales combined. This year alone, we're seeing the launch of, we've already seen the launch, I should say, of crucial new EVs like the Cupra Born and the Hyundai Ioniq 6, and there's still more important models to come, like the Toyota bZ4X, Ford Mustang Mach-E, and Volvo EX30. So the question is, are we seeing the tipping point for Australia here? Are we charging headfirst into that EV future, guys? What's your gut feel here?
Oh, look, I reckon we haven't tipped yet. The point hasn't quite reached us right at this stage, but it's rapidly approaching that. We've seen those Model 3 sales outsell Camry and a few other, family favorites in Australia. We've got EV9 from Kia arriving sometime towards the end of this year. There's a lot of new EVs that are coming to Australia, but I still think Australians are a little bit skeptical. The sales are good, but I reckon those are people that would have bought EVs anyway. What manufacturers need is regular people who are currently driving petrol Kia Sorentos and things like that to be convinced that it's time to buy an electric car. And I tell a lot of people that, look, maybe this car that you buy could be a petrol one, but definitely the next car you get will be electric. Yeah, I don't know. Tom, what do you think?
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because we've seen such a rapid increase. I remember, like, if we had this conversation a year ago, we would have been excited that EVs were 4% of the market, and now they're double that. And it will probably double again next year. But I'm interested to see where that equilibrium is, because it's not going to exponentially increase forever. I think, there are some natural limits in Australia for the demand for EVs. I think a lot of what we've seen so far has been new models on the market. Not everyone wants a Tesla Model 3. Prices coming down. Tesla's helped with that, but so have newcomers into the market as well. And supply freeing up, because we've had, since this kind of EV revolution started several years ago, we've had a lot of supply issues. Like, brands have had all these new models that they're really excited about, and then they're able to deliver 100 cars in the first year on sale. So that's obviously naturally hampered the sales. So I think we will see sales continue to skyrocket, because there's a lot of latent demand for it. People are excited about it, and I think there's a kind of domino effect in that. Now when I go down to my local shops, I see a full lineup of Tesla Model 3s on charging bays, and people go, well, if I'm seeing a full set of them there, maybe I can do it too. So I think it's happening now. It's going to continue to happen. There's a lot of demand left. There's a lot of models left to come. But yeah, I think we will reach an equilibrium point at some point in the future.
You talk about natural limits, and I reckon a very natural limit is the prohibitive cost of electric vehicles as well. I mean, you can't get an electric vehicle, a new one anyway, under about $42,000, $44,000, depending on how well you know your dealer. MG are offering some pretty good deals, and so is GWM and the rest of those sort of challenger brands. Bit more for a Tesla. Look, that is truly out of most Australians' price ranges. You add on, on-road costs and things like that, and it's $50,000 really when it comes down to it. If you're buying a first car and you're just off on your P's, how can you want to buy an electric vehicle? You can't. I looked at Auto Trader, which is our sister site for all the classifieds. You can actually buy secondhand EVs, and I was dead against this, but now I'm thinking it's probably a really smart thing to do, because you can get like a Tesla Model 3 with about 50,000 Ks on it. All right, okay, Tom, I can see Tom going, for about $42,000, and I'm thinking, you know what? That's cheaper than an MG. That's not bad. That's a Model 3, from a couple of years ago. So you're not going to have it forever, but it could be another way into an electric vehicle. But yeah, until those costs become parity with petrol, wow, that tipping point's not going to come.
You bring up a really good point, Richard. Like, this year alone, like you said, you've got the BYD Dolphin, MG4, and now the GWM Aura all dipping in, starting before on-road costs, just under $40,000 there. You look at a comparable, I don't know, like a Mazda 3, maybe a Toyota Corolla, like they started around $30,000. I mean, that sort of like difference between those two, like a petrol car and an electric car, is really starting to close quite quickly. Tom, would you say electric cars are affordable now, or do you want to see the price sort of come down even further?
I think, well, it as Richard was saying, it depends on the buyer, because still, like $40,000, that's outside of the price budget of a lot of, especially people who might be buying their first new car. So, we're not necessarily talking about P-platers, buying their first ever vehicle. They have their own challenges right now with the used market the way it is. But I think, it's still a little bit outside of what we would consider the traditional bread and butter mainstream of that kind of, late $20,000 to mid $30,000 bracket, but it's getting dangerously close. And I think for some buyers who are aspirational, they might be a little bit more tech interested. They want an EV just for the fact that it is the next thing. I think those buyers would be willing to spend the extra to sort of stretch to one. And we do see a lot of buyers right now stretch to a Model 3. Like, they might not have considered a car in that, $60,000 price bracket before, but they're going, oh, I'll stretch to one because I want to be in an EV. I want to be seen in an EV. I think it's really cool, or I love the tech in it. And that's a big factor to play as well. So will that demand dry up? What happens to those cars when those leases expire in 3 to 5 years and they start to, come down to the used market? I think that's going to be really interesting.
But not only are we seeing prices come down, we're seeing that technology evolve at the same time, aren't we? Richard, I think you can sort of speak to this a little bit better than I can, but, going back 5-10 years ago, when the electric car options were first generation Nissan Leaf, maybe a Mitsubishi i-MiEV, offering up sub 300 kilometers of driving range, all these models that we're talking about now that are $40,000 will get you sort of 320, 350, 380 kilometers of driving range. And the electric car market and technology has moved so much in the last decade, hasn't it?
It has. And we've recently heard that Toyota has announced, allegedly a breakthrough in battery technology. So they've come up with solid state batteries, which is the holy grail of battery tech, because currently we use lithium ion, and it's got a liquid electrolyte, and which causes potential fires and safety risks. Also, issues with charging. It takes about 60 minutes to charge a 57 kilowatt hour battery up to from 10 to 80%. Toyota's talking about 10-minute charging times and ranges of like 1,200 kilometers. If this is true, now Toyota, I've worked for them before. Everything is so legal. They never say anything unless they're 100% sure of it. And so if Toyota are saying this is not some little startup company, right? This is Toyota. If they're saying this, then it is true. What they are saying, though, is that they won't have the technology available till 2027. So what do you do? Do you wait until 2027? Do you buy a car now? If you buy an electric vehicle now, will it be like buying like the beta version of video cassettes in the 80s? Will you have the wrong electric vehicle if you buy one now with the wrong battery? An old-fashioned lithium-ion battery, or do you wait for Toyota? It's only 3 or so years away. For Toyota to come up with a solid state battery with 1,200 Ks. So I reckon hold on to your petrol cars for now. There's nothing wrong with an early adopter. No one ever knocked anyone for buying a VCR early. We need early adopters to get the technology rolling. But I don't know, 3 years, solid state, looking good.
3 years could be too long to wait for some. I know a lot of people are looking at electric right now. And I guess we're in a very privileged position. We're automotive journalists. We've been at the forefront of this electric revolution for a long time now. And we've driven a lot of electric cars that have come to market. Richard, Tom, what are some of your favorites? What are you looking forward to? We've still got a few more models coming out this year and well into next. So if you are looking to buy electric, do you pull the trigger now? Do you wait? What's on the horizon?
I think there's a lot of exciting stuff that's already launched this year. Obviously, we're just talking about those three big Chinese models. We are all yet to drive the smaller BYD. That time will come though. I think that car will be really interesting. Is it the right time to go? I think that depends on you. So you have to understand, where's my nearest charger, both DC and AC. What charging time am I comfortable with? How much do I drive a week? What's my daily commute? How often do I travel further on the freeway? I think one interesting thing that I run into quite a lot in my testing, because I've had quite a few now back-to-back EV long-termers with all different ranges. Like I've deliberately asked for ones with like 200 Ks of range as a challenge to see if you can actually live with it. I think the interesting thing is once you get past about 350 Ks of range, the range is actually fine, even on the freeway, because if you think about it, yes, they're less efficient on the freeway, so you're not actually going to get that 350K range, but even if you can travel 200 Ks, you need to stop, revive, survive at that point anyway. And now it's getting much better with the charging network. You'll be able to stop, revive, survive and get a charge up, and all you need is 200 Ks. You don't need a fully charged battery. You just need the next 200 Ks, and that can happen pretty quickly. So I think people underestimate how much, range is a factor. People are sort of going, I have to have, a 700, 800, 1200 kilometer range like a diesel or a petrol gets right now. But they're thinking of that around, I'm only going to charge it up once a week. And that's fine then. If it takes me an hour to charge and I get 1200 Ks, great. But that's not really how you use an EV. So I think people sort of have to adjust that thinking a little bit.
Yeah. That driving range is such a psychological thing, isn't it? I know that like when my phone battery gets to like 20%, I'm freaking out. I'm like, where's my charger? Where's my charger? Where's the newest charger? But 20% is still going to get me, 2 or 3 hours worth of use, Yeah, and
totally.
chargers are plentiful for phones.
Look, I'm a 1% type of guy. Like when it gets to 1, that's when I put it on the charger. No, but it's true though. Like you'd be surprised at how limited your range is on a petrol car. We had a Mitsubishi Outlander petrol as a long-termer about 6 months ago. 450 Ks, 550 Ks with my type of driving in the city is all I could get out of it, which is around about the same distance as an MG ZS EV long range, which I recently videoed and tested. 440 Ks from that MG. That's pretty bloody good. Do you need any more than that? Well, you might if you're a sales rep and you're clocking up 1,000 Ks a week. But 440 Ks, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no one complains that they can only travel 400 Ks of range or whatever it is in their 5-liter Mustang. So, why is it suddenly an issue for the
But you know what people might not be taking into account these days is that if you put the air conditioning on a hot day in Australia's summer, your range can go from 440 Ks to 300 and something Ks too. So there's a lot of factors which you don't really get affected in petrol cars, with electric cars. So yeah.
And living conditions is a big one, right? Like, I live in a house, I have a garage, I can drive the car in, I can plug it in every night if I wanted to. You live in an apartment though, you don't have that easy access, so how do you juggle that? How do you, or you don't have off-street parking. Do you run that extension cord from the second story window all the way down and plug your EV on while it's on the street?
I've heard quite funny anecdotes of people driving around France and seeing that like Peugeot E208s with extension cables, just like there'll be an entire street of them, just extension cables coming out of units. Like, I mean, like I live in a unit and I'm lucky that I've got, a DC charger just down the street. And so I basically use it like a combustion car. Like I'll just drive around for 2 weeks straight, run out of my 400, 500K range in my Polestar 2 long-term that I'm currently in, and then I'll just plug it in once a week, once a fortnight, and get a full charge while I do a grocery shop. So I think but you do have to be conscious of that. You have to know where your local charges are. You have to know because there will be occasions where you need a fast charge, you have to factor all of that in if you're considering an EV over a hybrid, or and it's the same for a plug-in really. You got to figure out when you're going to plug it in, because if you're not plugging it in, it's useless. So all these factors.
I definitely think that something needs to be done in terms of infrastructure. I do not believe that any state grid in Australia has the capability to be able to support everybody suddenly charging an electric vehicle in their driveway. I don't think that there's the capacity to charge every electric vehicle with the current charging station set up in Australia. So we could be heading for a colossal, problem if everybody starts buying electric vehicles right now. We need private companies to come on board, because the government sure as hell's not doing anything, and come on board and work out charging alternatives, whether they inductive pads, which are underneath red lights or in traffic lights, charging ports on every single telegraph pole. We need charging infrastructure now. We need a more robust grid. Otherwise, we're not going anywhere, even if we've got the electric cars.
Yeah, but it's a funny thing, I think a lot of people talk about this flip or this switch to electric. I don't think it's going to happen like an on-off switch. It's going to be a gradual ramp up, right? And that should hopefully give us enough time to have the infrastructure in place, to accommodate such a thing. Fingers crossed,
That's the thing I'm hoping. Like, we're seeing a bit of a torrent of EVs hit the market now, but that's that latent demand that we've had, and the lags in supply and all the rest of it. And to be fair to the government, they are actually doing something. They have a fund set up which they can pair up with private companies and dip into. It's called the Arena Fund. And when the federal government switched over recently, they actually doubled that fund. So that's why you've seen probably quite a few more DC charging locations pop up. That fund does focus on DC charging. So the idea is to create a uninterrupted network on the east coast of Australia, Perth, where you'll be able to travel without having any charging issues all the way up and down the east coast of Australia. And I've spent some time chatting to a few of the charge providers as well, and they do talk about issues with the reliability. They say it's not a mature market yet. The supply chains for parts for chargers aren't quite there yet. Some of the business models differ quite a lot, and that's why there's different prices. There's different charging infrastructure. There's different ways that those charging pylons actually get fixed when they go wrong, which is why some of them stay out of service for months, whereas others are repaired the next day. So there's a lot of work to do on all sides, but something is happening, and that's why you're seeing a lot more chargers pop up. And I think that'll continue. And if they can continue that at a sustained rate while EV kind of demand sort of levels out, I don't think we'll have a problem. But it is a problem now. It's true.
Things are happening in Western Australia as well. There's a mirror of the electric superhighway, which is going up the east coast, and it's going to run from Margaret River down the south, very bottom of Western Australia, all the way up to the top of Western Australia as well. So, and there'll be charging points sort of within 200, 300 kilometers of each other. So yeah, there'll be another electric superhighway going up to the top of WA2 from the bottom. So yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. Just in time for hydrogen to come along. Yeah, that's right. Connect them.
Yep.
That's right.
Look, I don't know about you guys, but in the last 6 months alone, I've probably driven more electric cars than I have in the last 10 years combined. There's a lot sort of going on in there, in that electric car space. What I'm looking forward to the most this year, or possibly early next year though, is Volvo EX30. It's their all-electric small SUV. It starts at under $60,000 and it's going to offer 480 kilometers of driving range. Like, I think that is almost the perfect price point. You know that you're going to pay a little bit of a premium for an electric car and you're going to pay a bit of a premium for a luxury car. Well, this is kind of the crossover of the two. It's the right size, the right shape, with the right range at the right price. But it's going to make a huge impact. And I think it's going to absolutely steal sales away from Tesla Model 3, Tesla Model Y. I just wish Australia would confirm the cross-country version that I have in the background here. That's a bit higher riding, a bit more jacked up, a bit more rugged and off-road. What about you guys? What's on your radar?
I'll let you go, Richard.
Look, I'm looking forward to, and I have been for since I saw the first concepts of it as well. That is, and I mentioned it earlier, the Kia EV9. I think when brands like Kia and Hyundai embrace something like this, you know that it is going to become a household good, like all cars, should be. The EV9 looks like it's out of RoboCop. It's a beast. It's pretty sexy as well. It's probably the first large SUV electric vehicle we're going to get in Australia. Is that right, Tung? I don't think anyone else has.
You can BMW iX.
Yeah, well, isn't EV9 bigger? It's a 7 or 8 seater. Either way, it's only going to cost only about 90 $210,000, which is a lot less than an iX. So yeah, look, that's what I'm looking forward to. EV9 from Kia, also Ioniq 5N, which we've seen recently on our CarsGuide website. Another blisteringly fast one. Electric vehicles, they are very, very quick. But I tell you what, I drove a Subaru WRX with a manual gearbox the other day, and I almost cried when I had to send it back to Subaru after my loan finished. I will miss petrol cars. Sure, electric vehicles are fast, but I think petrol's got a soul to it, especially manual gearboxes. Tom, what do you reckon?
I've got to agree. EV9 is, because we've had to be fair, we've had so many exciting launches this year already. So there's a lot that's already behind us, but EV9 I think is the one left on the calendar that is sort of the big one. It's different from what we've seen before because it is a large 3-row SUV with a massive battery pack, massive driving range, big performance. It's something that we haven't sort of seen yet, and it's because of that natural limit to you've got a heavy battery pack and you just have to make it heavier if you've got a bigger car to maintain that range. So that's why we haven't seen too many large EV SUVs yet, but this will change that. And you're right, it's not that expensive in terms of what it is and what you're paying for. It sounds ridiculous to say because it's like obviously most of the population can't just fork out $120,000 for a massive 3-row electric SUV. But that having been said, considering the battery size and everything, it's a pretty impressive price point. And at the same time, people fork out this much money or more for a Land Cruiser. So it's not as though it's out of the realm of what people can afford in Australia anyway. I think, that model's super exciting. It'll come with all those features that, Kia and Hyundai are so good at, that really high voltage infrastructure underneath that lets it charge really fast. V2L features, so you can power your household devices from it. Could be a really cool camping car. Just all those sorts of things that they're so far ahead on, and like a really genuine efficiency and a genuine range as well is what we'd hope for too, because that's what we've seen so far. I think too, there's a few exciting, interesting models. Like you've got Toyota bZ4X. I think that's a really curious one. I'm not sure that I'm going to be as impressed by this car as I will be of the EV9, if I'm being honest, just from what I've seen from the specs so far. It seems
bZ4X on paper seems like, it's the Toyota, the biggest car company in the country. bZ4X is their first all-electric model. Like, it has the potential to be an absolute game changer. But Tom, I think you think otherwise?
Well, they've already warned that it's going to be expensive. They're saying, don't expect a RAV4 price point. Don't expect it to be, particularly affordable. Don't expect there to be a lot of supply because there's quite a lot of demand worldwide. So I think as well, like the power and torque specs aren't as high as some of its rivals. There's been a bit of controversy around its range calculation overseas. So I think this one might be a bit challenged in the Australian market. Obviously, Toyota's got that built-in audience and there'll always be a buyer for it. So there's always going to be a waiting list. But it's not one that I'm as excited for. I just think it will be really interesting to see how it does here.
Look, another model in that same vein is Ford Mustang Mach-E, right? Like, that car was revealed 2-3 years ago at this point, and now it's only just coming to Australia by the end of this year. It's already old. There are already newer models available, and it carries that nameplate that has so much history and pedigree in terms of performance and V8. So can that Mustang Mach-E live up to that potential? I don't know.
I'm looking forward to it, but I reckon they've made a little bit of a mistake here. They should have release that Mustang Mach-E with the V8 petrol engine and an alternative variant being an electric drivetrain as well, just so people can get into it. I think, we still love our big high performance SUVs, and a Mustang SUV would have been killer. But at the same time, an electric variant would have been awesome as well. Offer them side by side, make the electric one faster, right? Even though it doesn't have the same sort of sound. So look, I'm looking forward to that. I don't think Mustang just has to be a two-door sports car. It is a brand. It's the one Ford which doesn't have a Ford badge on it. So it is a brand of basically a standalone brand. But yeah, I would have loved to see a V8 Mustang Mach-E as well.
I think that's going to about do it for this newscast, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, Richard Berry and Tom White.
Thank you.
Guys, let us know if you plan on buying an EV. Let us know if this newscast has helped, or if you have any other further questions about how to get into the EV space in the future.
Have you bought an EV and do you regret it or do you love it?
Yeah.
Let us know.
Have you bought a
Exactly.
second-hand EV? Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.